Okay, in this exercise, we're going to work on the 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch overlocked bust open. So on your pattern piece, they're listed as two separate samples, so we're going to need to cut two of this pattern piece. So I've got my fabric. Let me lay it out flat. Now you may see the selvage over here, but we're going to work from this edge. And I'm going to remind you that if you don't have a selvage edge to line up your straight grain with, remember to do your stretch test. If you get give going one direction, that's probably the cross grain. And if you stretch in another direction and you don't really have any give, that must be your straight grain. So I'm going to align this pattern along the straight grain. I'm going to come away from this cut edge. I don't really trust that it's actually cut on the straight grain. So I'm going to come away and I'm just going to eye that my grain line is going along the straight grain in the fabric. And use weights to hold it in place. And then I'm going to use my pencil to trace around the pattern. Don't forget to mark your notches. Then, since we need two of these, I'm going to move the pattern and match one of the edges of the pattern along the previous line. So we're conserving pattern, we're butting it up against that line. And I'm going to trace the second one. Mark the notch on the second one. And now that's done marking. Now I can cut these out. And I'm going to cut all the way around both of the perimeters first. Then I will separate the two along that line that I used to butt the pattern up against. And then I'll come back and I will clip the notches. Now, if you don't want to cut them separately, individually, you can lay your pattern pieces right on top because they're exactly the same. Then you can use your ruler, mark your cut line to separate the two pieces for the individual samples. Once that is done, separate the two pieces. One of these is going to be a 1/2 inch seam and the other is going to be a 3/4 inch seam. I'm going to use a marking pen to mark the face side. We'll match the face sides. Pin them in place. Again, this is the 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch overlocked bust open. And so what we're going to do at the machine, we're going to sew the appropriate seam allowance. Then we are going to go to the pressing board and we're going to press the seam open. And then we're going to go to the overlock machine and just overlock the edges without cutting anything off. Remember that when we use the overlock machine, the seam needs to remain the same. And now we're ready to go to the machine. Okay, we're ready to do our 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch overlock bust open, and I have two pairs of fabric here. I'm going to first start with just one of the sets, and we're going to do the 1/2 inch seam first. So just as a reminder, face sides together, line up your cut edges, press your foot up, push the fabric, aligning it along your 1/2 inch guideline, just past where the needle goes in. Press your foot down. We're going to start with a back stitch. and then we'll sew the seam. Coming up to the end, get ready to backstitch and backstitch, and bring that needle all the way back up to the top. Pull the fabric out, clip your threads. And notice on this exercise, I started sewing a little bit faster. Now that we've done several seams, we can actually start practicing sewing a little bit faster. So now there's the 1/2 inch seam. I'm going to do the 3/4 inch seam now. Again, face sides together, cut edges, aligning your edges together. Presser foot up, fabric under the presser foot, just past the needle, aligning with the 3/4 inch line. Foot down, needle down, and begin with your back stitch. And we'll sew that seam. Coming up to the end, backstitch. Bring that needle all the way up, presser foot up. You can remove the fabric and clip your threads. So now I have the 3/4 inch and the 1/2 inch, and now we need to overlock them. Okay, so here I have the 1/2 inch and the 3/4 inch bust open, and I'm just going to press these flat real quick. This sets those stitches. And then let's do this one at a time. So these were face sides together, so we'll need to turn this so we see the inside. And then we're just actually going to open up this seam allowance, make sure everything is flush to the outside, right? And then we're just going to press this open. And then I like to flip it over and also give it a nice press on the front, on the face side. So now this is our 1/2 inch, and we busted it open. And now what we're going to do is we'll go to the overlock, and we'll overlock each one of these seam allowances. It makes sense to press it open first, so that when you overlock it, we don't actually accidentally cut too much off. And we really don't want to cut anything off. We just want to actually overlock it so it's clean finish, so these frayed edges are nice and clean. So now I'm going to press open the 3/4 inch. And there we have both of our seam allowances pressed open. Okay, so I'm ready to overlock the seam allowances of my busted open seams. So I'm going to start with the 1/2 inch. And for the seam allowance, just grab onto it and then fold the rest of the fabric away, so you just have that one layer. And again, for your overlocking, you're going to push the fabric up under the presser foot close to the needle, and your cut edge of the seam allowance should be aligned with the knife. Remember not to cut anything off. We're just cleaning up these frayed edges. Okay, there's one side. Now we're gonna do the other side. So pick up that seam allowance, fold everything underneath. Again, push the fabric up, aligning the edge of the cut edge with the knife. And then make sure you trim all of your threads. Okay, so now the 3/4. Again, just that single layer of the seam allowance, matching your edges correctly. And then we're going to grab the other seam allowance. And there's our 3/4. And I'll show you the 1/2 inch again as well. And then we'll actually just give this one final press. Sometimes when you're stitching, your stitch line can kind of make the fabric ripple a little bit. We'll just flatten that out with a nice final press.